Hi, this is Regina Y. Favors with the Toxic Encounters book. And so I have another topic that I want to discuss. It is the topic of emotional homelessness, found in chapter 3 of the book, where I explore the concept. The book is titled Toxic Encounters: Why People Pursue Rebound Relationships, Part 1, and it is part 1 of a 3-part series. So, emotional homelessness is not something that we generally have an everyday common speech about. It is something that I believe that we feel without really giving it voice. I feel like you can be emotionally homeless really in any type of relationship that includes your immediate family dynamic, friendships, especially within romantic relationships. And because my book um, focuses more on romantic rebounding, I like to sort of focus more on romantic relationships when it comes to emotional homelessness. So, um, in terms of how I might be defining it, it is interesting because the way in which I am defining it is that you are supposed to be in relationship with someone that it should have some kind of fulfilling role in your life. I mean, you can't get all that you can get from one person or many people, but you should be able to get something in terms of emotional support from your relationship, especially if you are in a romantic relationship and you are sleeping with your partner or sleeping with your husband or sleeping with your wife, that uh, the activity of having sex or making love should not be the only time you feel some sort of emotion or some sort of emotional support. Someone is holding you in the bed, and you feel maybe secure in that relationship while you are having sex, but once you get out of the bed, it is something completely different. You don't have the full emotional support that you thought you might have had outside of the bed. It's like there's one activity in one area and another activity in another area. So you get out of the bed and you're not having emotionally based conversations. And emotionally based conversations do not have to be yelling, screaming matches, heightened tones, or anything like that. It could be just you are concerned about a few issues at your job and you need someone to talk to about it, or you are concerned about things are not getting done the way they need to get done at the house and you're just concerned about it. It's basically expressing your concerns and feeling like you have the emotional support and emotional space, the safe space to do that. That's what I believe. When you are emotionally supported, it's a safe space. You don't feel like you're going to be judged. You don't feel like you're going to be mocked or uh, criticized. There's always constructive criticism, which is fine. But if you find yourself in a relationship with someone, especially an intimate partner, and all they do is mock and be sarcastic and not really take you seriously and even joke and laugh at your expense, that is not a relationship where you feel emotionally safe. That's not a safe space. And that could be an example of emotional homelessness, because when you think about homeless, this is a person who's moving about from place to place. If you're thinking about a person who lives in different shelters, it's called shelter hopping. So then if you are jumping from relationship to relationship, for example, then it is like you are jumping from shelter to shelter. You're looking for someone to cover you. You're looking for someone to shelter you. Not that you don't know how to do that yourself, not that you don't know how to be an adult and take care of yourself and cover your shelter costs and cover all of your other adult expenses. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is, if you're going to be in an intimate relationship or even in a very close friendship, you already have to deal with a number of individuals who are going to be rude, unkind, unsympathetic, less empathetic, sometimes nasty, sometimes deliberate in their ways of trying to handle you, you already have to deal with those people outside of your immediate home or outside of your immediate relationship. So then why would you want to take on those tasks with an intimate partner or with a friendship or even with a family member? Uh, the outside world already burns you out with all of its dictates and issues and challenges and lies and skepticisms and cynicisms and just all different types of challenges and issues and problems that don't want to be resolved, or people who don't want to resolve problems. There's already a number of issues that you would have to deal with outside of the home, outside of the immediate friendship, family member, intimate relationship. You already have more than your share of having to deal with that. So when you come home, you want to come home to safety. You want to come home feeling secure. You don't want to come home feeling the majority of your relationship as insecure. And so emotional homelessness is essentially that feeling of being insecure in your relationship of any kind. And if you are feeling insecure in your current relationship, and let's just speak on romantic relationships for right now, if you are feeling insecure in that relationship, then there is some kind of root cause to your feelings today. And so then you probably can draw a line back to your childhood and where you might have felt insecure with your mother, with your father, with the home environment altogether. So that's just drawing an arrow back to your history. So then if you draw that arrow from your history to your present and all of the activities in between, you can just about chart um, sort of that insecurity train track, that insecurity path that you chose over a secure relationship. You can find, you'll probably think to yourself, that boyfriend who was abusive. You would think to yourself, that friend who abandoned you for another friend. And that's usually in high school, where one person becomes popular or something like that, and that friend decides to drop you for popularity's sake, right? Then you might have had a boyfriend who didn't claim you, even though he did whatever he did to you uh, within the home or whatever, but he didn't really claim you at school. And then you moved. Then you could say you had a hostile relationship with your mother or with your father. And so what those experiences, just in the immediate childhood family dynamic context, inform your worldview about people and how people approach you and how people act with you or act against you. It sort of distorts your vision. It distorts how you see the world. And so then if you find yourself again in an emotionally homeless relationship now, it is because you have been walking that path from from childhood to young adulthood to whatever age you are at now. And so that is something to think about and consider, because as you assess your life now, reassess your life, make some new decisions, make some better decisions, that is something that you need to think about, because you cannot live in an emotionally homeless situation the rest of your life. It will cause health aspects, it will cause health issues, it will affect your finances, because you're going to be moved by this need to close a gap that you don't see or don't understand, can't reconcile, struggle with. It's going to affect what you do in your career, whether or not you stick with something. It affects your ability to problem solve. You know that all life is about solving problems. And so if you are struggling with solving some problem in your life, whatever that problem is, that means you are in a setback. You may be successful in other areas of your life, but in that one area, and everyone knows what that one area is for them. Uh, That one area is the area that is just kind of holding you back, is not letting you move forward, and that's simply because you have not addressed it. And that could also be to a form of emotional homelessness. So I'm just going to read the questions, read the statements, and then add some analysis to it. So you can be emotionally homeless in a relationship. In what relationship have you experienced emotional homelessness? So one of the most obvious types of relationships where you can be emotionally homeless is in the is within the abuse context, right? You can be in an emotionally homeless situation with an abuser. The one thing you know for certain is that he is going to abuse you, or she is going to abuse you. You know that for certain. Sure, you walk on eggshells. You anticipate when that hit is coming. When he opens the door to the house, you shake. Um, you plan to leave, or you promise to leave, or you threaten to leave, but you don't stick to your guns. You don't stick to what you say. You don't let your no be no, or your yes be yes. And so then you are in sort of like this straddling of the emotional fence. You're not quite on one side, but your feet are on another side, which makes you emotionally homeless. So yes, you can definitely be emotionally homeless in a relationship. And when it comes to emotional homelessness in a relationship, that can be any type of relationship. How many times have you heard people say that they are unhappy at their jobs, even though they are highly skilled, they do well at the job, they get great reviews in terms of feedback on their performance, and they are liked by their coworkers. They make good money. It helps to fund their lifestyle or their living or their adulting, but somehow they are just unhappy. And it can be a high paying job, or it can be a low paying job. It really doesn't matter if you are basically unhappy. So that means that they are emotionally homeless in their career. They have not seemed to gain their footing or solidify or secure themselves. They're basically um, moving about emotionally without any real um, emotional security about it. So that's your career. Then, of course, in friendships, you can definitely be emotionally homeless. You just have this friendship where it just seems like you're doing all the work in that friendship, and the friend is not doing all the work. It's not really committing to the friendship. It's almost like the person thinks that he or she has other options, and that's why you might find yourself choosing a man who acts like that. That the man is in love with all of his preferences and options, and is unwilling to choose, and that's also a form of emotional homelessness. And so when people are unwilling to choose, uh, um, that includes yourself. You find yourself sort of walking along your path without really any true direction. And that's how I think you end up emotionally sleepwalking. That's a form of emotional homelessness, emotionally sleepwalking. And if you are emotionally sleepwalking, that too has its roots in some kind of childhood trauma, something where something happened to you that turned off part of your brain that you can't quite grasp when you try to access that area of their brain. And it's almost like the brain protected itself. And so then you find yourself in self-destructive situations that look on the surface as something that's going to be good for you, but turns out that it's not good for you. So the abusive context, the friendship context, the family member context, the immediate family dynamic. If you didn't have a lot of teachable moments within your immediate family dynamic and you were sort of ruled by an authoritarian type parent, sort of hostile, toxic, yelling, a lot of chaos and drama, you are definitely a person reflective of emotional homelessness, because you didn't get quite the security you needed when you were young. And so that meant that you grew up in an insecure, attached um, environment. And so then whatever you grew up in, you tend to create outside of that environment. No matter how much you try to leave that environment behind and try to do better in another environment, and say to yourself, I'm not going to do my kids the way my mother did me or my father did me. I'm not going to do this man the way my ex did me. The more you try to do that, the more you find yourself in the exact same environment where you felt emotionally insecure and emotionally homeless. So the only way to resolve emotional homelessness is really to call it what it is. Call it what it is, that you are not emotionally secure. This does not mean that you have a mental health issue. And mental health issues can be an example of emotional homelessness, but we would normally call it emotional dysregulation or something like that. But this is not necessarily a mental health issue. This is just being tossed to and fro in relationships without a real security base. That's what I believe emotional homelessness is. So when you think about these relationships that you create and sustain and engage and perpetuate and continue, think about this from the standpoint of security, and if those relationships provide a secure base. So then in what relationship have you experienced emotional homelessness? Again, that's something that is more subjective for you. I know for me, my emotional homelessness began in childhood, because I have a very insecure attachment to my mother, who was a hostile, created a toxic environment. She pitted my brothers against me, and then me against my brothers. She would talk to me about one brother and talk to another brother about me, and talk to both brothers about me, and the reverse. So we never quite had a firm, secure, safe space relationship with our mother, even though it might have seemed like it. Even though there were some good times, there were some laughing times, there were some joking times, there were some times where it seemed like it was a real family and that we were going to be all right. But I'm also estranged from my mother and my family today because of that toxicity, because of that drama, because of my mother's provoking nature. She's very good at poking, prodding, and provoking. And because she can provoke you to anger, it is just not a healthy dynamic to continue to pursue. Because when someone provokes you to anger like that, you can end up in jail. You can end up in a mental health facility. You can end up really destroying yourself, because it seems like you are grasping at the wind, which is another type of emotional homelessness. It seems like you are grasping at the wind of that relationship, or that feeling, or that understanding, and it is not quite the way it should be, but you know that the way it is not the way it's supposed to be. And so that was my situation. And so then it distorted my worldview about about relationship making. Within the family dynamic, there was no real resolution. There was an authoritarian parent that told you what to do, and you had to do it. That parent is the type of parent, as all parents are, who will tell you, if you sort of semi question something, because I said so. Again, there was no teachable moment. There was no sitting down trying to understand the situation. And parents don't have to answer to kids. That's not what I'm suggesting. But it does make a big difference if you are ordering a kid to do something. It does make a big difference to explain how important this is and what impact it's going to have versus just yelling out commands. So then I took that distorted view, partly the view that it's supposed to be the type of relationship that you're supposed to have with a parent, where you are supposed to respect and honor and obey. That is something that I didn't have a problem with. What I had a problem with was the bouts of emotional distress and the pitting us all against each other, and sort of sitting back and looking at her handiwork, to the point that today we are not even in communication with each other. Like if she died today, my siblings and I would not have a relationship. That should not be a legacy that you leave behind. And so that's a legacy of emotional homelessness, because we are all in different places. Still, one person is out of state, but the rest of us are within one city and state, and we don't talk. And sure, it bothers me, but I also have to pursue peace. That peace has become my strategy. I cannot have a situation anymore where I live in anxiety for when she's going to decide what she's going to decide to do, because she comes from a direct background of abuse herself, and having to walk on eggshells with my father. She passed that down to me, and then I sort of lived that out through emotional sleepwalking, to the point that I got into very abusive and destructive relationships. Now I take responsibility, but in reflection, I really now understand what's been going on, and that the relationships I got myself into that were destructive set me back. I'm at a point now where I'm kind of burned out with romantic relationships. I just don't have the energy. And so my goal now is to secure myself emotionally, not be tossed to and fro from different situations, be financially secure, because I believe financial security does dictate emotional security, and the reverse. Emotional security can dictate financial security. And so spending time with myself in solitude, isolation, working on a number of projects, and just working, period, I believe it's going to lead me into creating safe spaces for myself, and then making sure that I am aware, I'm consciously aware of when I am about to enter unsafe spaces, so I don't live an emotionally homeless life. So I think that's very important to consider. Again, emotional homelessness is not something that a concept that I just found on the internet. It's something that I thought about and applied to myself directly in reference to my experiences, my direct experiences, and then of course some observations that I have noticed with other people, sometimes through film, sometimes just through previous experiences and observations. So this is emotional homelessness. You can find this in chapter 3 of the book, Toxic Encounters, Why People Pursue Rebound Relationships, part 1 of a 3-part series. You can visit my website, reginawhitefavors.com. Like, subscribe, and follow. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Just type in Regina White Favors. Thank you very much for listening.